Hello, everybody. Welcome to the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Taylor, joined by Ben Roy Turner
Hello there.
and Josh Brown.
Hello there.
Chaps, this is a full spoilers Resident Evil 8 Village podcast. We're going to be delving into whatever comes up, so you have been warned. It will be titled this way as well, which isn't as much to say that Ethan's a big old molded zombie man. Don't worry about it. If you know that information, then you're sticking around for the majority. Now, I thought we'd start with an open-ended question. We do have some specific points that we want to get to, but I thought I'd just ask the general question of what were either of your general thoughts when you hit credits? What was the feeling that was going through your mind when you sort of hit the end? Mr. Josh Brown, let's start with you.
Well, lads, I have a confession to make because I love Resident Evil in its totality, and I'm a huge fan of the series, a huge fan of the games, and yet they have this habit of, in the final act, kind of disappointing me in a way. I love Resident Evil 7 until you get to like the tanker and then you have to fight through the mines. It just kind of falls apart a little bit for me, but I'm thankful to say Resident Evil 8 Village didn't leave this lasting impression, and I'm really pleased that it didn't go tits up in the final act. So I hit credits and I thought, that's a lot of mad stuff I've just experienced there. Most of it didn't expect to see happen in a Resident Evil game, but ultimately I was here for it and I came away excited to replay the game. And I know not a lot of people won't have that same feeling and might think it jumps the shark towards the end, but for me, it did it in an exciting way where I was kind of giddy for the first time ever playing a Resident Evil story in the way that I should have been in 6, having like the mad team ups in 6. I kind of like got that giddiness, especially towards the Chris stuff towards the end. But I do have some issues with it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I did freak out when you realized that like Ethan gets his heart torn out and he gets full fatality style, and I was like, oh my god, are we actually gonna kill him? And then you get to play the whole section as Chris. I was popping like crazy for that bit because I was like, this is awesome. I actually get to play as him, and because we're in this sort of new era of like what is Resident Evil in terms of them experimenting with the more first person full main game stuff, I was like, oh, is this going to be a thing where we spend time as like a character like Ethan and then you switch to the main cast at the very end to do some sort of seismic thing? And the entire Chris section is just like, if you've been having any trouble shooting those werewolves, you just get to go crazy with all the weapons.
That the Dragoon assault rifle just melting their faces and just going through. And unlike Ethan, where he sort of struggles and pushes a lichen back if it bites you, if you do it as Chris, probably just thumps them in the face and they go flying. And you're just like, oh yeah, this is a man that can punch boulders. Of course he's gonna murk.
They brought his arms back as well. Like Chris's entire design is like kind of infused with his RE5 and 6 self, I guess. Like he's a complete meathead.
It's like its final form and like little bits like that. I'm going to mention like an Easter egg, like he gets the finally smoke, which was cut out of Resident Evil 1, the live action intros where like Chris goes to light a cigarette and then they put things over him because you can't do that back in 96. But this is like he's having a smoke in the car just like before he's about to just destroy everything in just in a heart-pounding sequence. And I wish there was more of like you go through some of the buildings and you go to night vision, and it just felt like playing like Modern Warfare for a bit.
Yeah.
But it's just like I could ramble about that forever, so I'll let you carry on, Scott. But I just thought that bit was like, oh
no, man, I'm good. I think whatever thoughts come to, because the thing is, like, because ultimately a lot of the time I was playing through it, I was like, this is my game of the year. I didn't think it started very well. I thought it was very rushed. All the stuff with Maya being shot by Chris, and then like that stuff, the Chris's stuff. Basically, I love playing as him and their version of the character, the look of him, and everything. But for me, they really dropped the ball with everything in regards to him in the story, and where I didn't buy his motivation. I didn't think it made any sense. And we can talk about that stuff. But ultimately, the way that it plays, I do think ultimately I'm very positive on it. But I think that it is in like 10 different directions at once. They try so many different strands of horror, whether it be like out PTing PT in the Beneviento house, or doing sort of more disgusting swamplands, sort of like that type stuff. I think they try a lot of different stuff and they nail the vast majority of it. But where they try and hook things in is what the marketing was built on, which was, why is Chris Redfield turning up and killing Maya, Ethan's wife or whatever, and stealing their kid? And where did you guys come down on that stuff? Because I think I'm probably going to be the most negative out of you, but what were your thoughts on that?
It's weird because if they didn't show Mia getting lit up in those trailers, I would have been like, what? Like that would have been a total WTF moment, even though it kind of is like when you play the game, right? But it's weird that they chose to show that, but then it also led me thinking, is Chris going to be bad? But then it seems to be like his super overcorrection of like, up until this point, everyone Chris has ever worked with who's not been like a main person has died. So the fact that spoilers, none of his direct like Wolfhound Squad, not gang, not Wolf Gang, that
Diamond
stupid like what is it, the Discovery Channel song? I can't get that Bloodhound Gang song out of my head, but I just keep thinking of the Bloodhound Gang.
Do in Resident Evil Village.
Yeah, but like I think it's him it's essentially him trying to overcorrect himself and trying not to get Ethan involved because he doesn't know what's special about Ethan, and he doesn't want Ethan to end up dying.
That would have been a brilliant way to write that character if they put that in the game.
I guess it's me pulling through so much stuff of Chris and like the films, and at one point Leon's a massive drunk as well, and he has to save Leon and stuff. But yeah, me just pulling back from all that, which I guess they could have like gave him 5 more sentences to say this instead of being like, "There's Chris. I'm so excited. Oh, he's gone again," sort of thing.
Well, so the base explanation for why he killed Maya and took Rose was that Maya was a clone, was mimicked by Mother Miranda was actually mimicking Maya, and the timescale for that is that she injected herself into the family, assumedly like a couple nights before or something, because Maya's in the prison cell. When. Yeah, no idea when.
But I guess. Just jumping out, why they would keep her alive in the cell is because she survived the mold as well. So that's probably why she didn't just kill her straight, because Mia is still useful in that way. But yeah.
But like Chris steals Rose and then tells Ethan, just stay away, don't come after me. Like, or don't, he doesn't even say don't come after me. He just says don't get involved. And then like, later on in the game when you come across him again, he says, I can't believe you're here. Why are you here? And it's like, dude, you shot my wife and stole my child. I'm gonna care. I couldn't get past that for me as playing it, because I was like, I just want Ethan to react more. And then when you find out that Mia's a clone, he doesn't even say where's the real Maya or Mia. You find out that one of Chris's companions says it, and I'm just like, what is this writing? Like, what the hell?
I guess it's because that van, they're all in that van and they all got murked, so he would have assumed that Ethan would have died, and they like, you can't just
there's no body though.
But they didn't go back there though, did they? Like, do we know if they got to go back there? Because they look separated and pretty stranded. So
yeah, I guess so.
A bunch of lichens about, like, I feel like they're scraping through, but then that's me trying to connect dots where there might not be dots, so who knows. But then at one point, did you go to like one of their posts where you find the antique coin after you get on the boat and stuff? Like,
I don't think so.
At that point I was like, oh, that could be a hint that Mia's alive, because why is there an antique coin there just before you? too many threads in my head. Please take it off me. I'm just my brain. I'm cursing.
Josh, what did you think of the way they handled Chris? I have so much more to say about all that stuff, but like, yeah, what were your thoughts on everything with him?
Yeah, the Chris stuff is the weakest part of the game for me. Even when they showed it off in the trailers, I never found it that compelling, because I was like, it's Resident Evil. Of course, he's not going to be bad. They're not going to do it. There's going to be some reason to why he's gone in and killed her. Whether she's not going to be real, whether she was going to be still infected or something. I never found that an interesting story thing. I thought it might be interesting to see how they characterized Chris in that moment, but as a mystery, I was never kind of, compelled to it, because I didn't expect there to be much nuance in it. In the actual game, there isn't really. And when you get the stuff with Chris, especially towards the end, when he's giving the justification for it, I think does completely fall apart, where he's talking about, we didn't want to get Ethan involved. And then at one point, one of his teammates is like, oh, actually, Chris, lad,
probably should have said.
You probably should have said. And he's like, yeah, no, it's a bit late for that now. And it's like, yeah, it is a bit too late for that now. You've had a few times throughout this game where you've just pushed Ethan back. Like, I can kind of get keeping some kind of mystery, because he does think that Ethan might be infected at the beginning. That's one of his reasons why he doesn't tell him. But by the time Ethan's in the village and he's like coming into contact with them, why not then just be like, actually, you know what, come along. You're going to do it anyway, obviously.
Yeah, we could have teamed up. We could fight Miranda together. Yeah. There's no real reason to do this.
Yeah. And you get that weird thing at the beginning as well, where it's stated that Chris has actually put Ethan through military training. He knows he's survived the Baker Mansion, so he knows he's capable to an extent. Obviously, he's not Chris punching boulders, punching lichens in the face competent, but he's pretty competent. So all of that stuff for me was the weakest part. And I was kind of pleased that they kept it to a minimum in a way, because I did like the rest of the story. But every time Chris when Capcom was trying so hard to make you think that he's really villainous, I was just like, I could see through it, and I was like, I know what you're trying to do. It's not working for me personally.
With that, in the initial trailer where they showed, Chris coming in, and he shoots Maya, and Ethan reacts immediately and says, "What? Why?" and freaks out. I just wanted that. I wanted that energy, because I feel like he's missing that for the whole sort of first hour. Everything's just happening, like, werewolves taking people away, and then he goes down to a cellar full of dead bodies, and then he says, "Oh, a dead body?" And it's just like, where is the through line context for like your reactions to this stuff? And I guess that it's like, well, he's already seen quite a lot of stuff. He survived the Baker Mansion. But for me, like I said, it was really slapdash at the beginning. It was just kind of rushing to get somewhere where I didn't feel it needed to hurry so much. But I guess in terms of, to round it out, Ben Roy, because you obviously did the review and everything, like did the Chris stuff land for you better because you have on hand the sort of knowledge of the series a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, they did that thing with Resident Evil. It was like characters going to come in and go away, like Barry in 1, Claire and Leon in 2. They never just sort of like work together and go through the thing. Like there's bits where I said like when Chris and Ethan get split up, it's always like, well, Big Fish Man comes in and then Chris is now gone. But like, for certain things that happen, like for me, I would have liked to see more of a darker side to Chris, but I'm glad that I feel like I saw more of a human side to Chris than I have done. And I feel like he's come for a walk now and he's more capable in a way, but still sort of like held down by some of the past stuff. And it's weird you said the intro, because I don't know, I was pulled into total fear playing that intro and throughout the thing, like going through and being bitten by that first werewolf. And thanks Capcom for embargoing a werewolf biting part of his hand off and then asking us not to show that for the whole review. That was really nice. But then that whole sequence, like reminiscing RE4, like I mean, I don't know.
Some of the best stuff
I'm
is,
a bit of a wimp sometimes when it comes to first playthroughs, and I was like, not crying, but I was like, just don't kill me, just scrambling through trying to survive. But for me, Chris stuff mostly landed, but they do the Capcom thing of like, we're gonna help you, and now we're gone.
Right. Yeah. So I guess to round off the point I was making about the Rose Chris stuff is that, yeah, ultimately, he was taking Rose away because Rose is going to be, she was like taken away by Mother Miranda and the lords and everything to do this experiment because Mother Miranda is trying to bring her own daughter back from 100 years ago, where she lost her daughter to the Spanish flu, and she's been experimenting on various different villages, various many different people to try and find a certain subject to bring her daughter back using this new element called the Megamycete, which is this almost like a giant cloud server of souls and consciousness that she found underground when she was doing her research. And she can use Rose to... God, even explaining this is ridiculous. She can use Rose. I don't get the crystallized thing. She crystallizes Rose into various different parts, and then she's going to bring those parts back together again and resurrect her daughter. That's the main thrust.
I think it's separating her so it keeps her entity, but Rose is gone. But because Rose has been part of the Megamycete, her consciousness is uploaded there. Like Evelyn is in Ethan's brain. It gets very anime at one point. And
I thought of it as like the Megamycete's the cloud server, and any Kadoos are USB drives.
It's like she is the perfect vessel to hone her daughter's consciousness, right? Like Lady Dimitrescu, if she doesn't get enough blood, she goes into giant vampire lady. If Frogman doesn't get enough
Jonathan
juice,
Frogman,
he becomes Frog Boy and cries on his own. And like ever since that, and Heisenberg just isn't there either, sort of thing. So it's basically just like, you're the perfect person to take over. I'm trying. This has been done in like so many films that I can't think to reference to, but
just at the end as well,
you're the MacGuffin sort of thing, really.
Yeah, at the end when she reaches into this sort of pool of Megamycete stuff, it is like Ethan's Rose that comes back out, and then she's like distraught at that and annoyed, and you go into the final fight and everything. But that is the sort of crux of like Chris was trying to save Rose, killed fake Maya. And then it all goes sideways, and Mother Miranda manages to retrieve Rose anyway. That's the meat of what was really happening. That's the big twist thing. And also alongside that, we mentioned Ethan quite a bit. Massive twist with him is that he was always a molded, or whatever you call it, from RE7.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if you guys want to try and like dive into that. Yeah, you loved that, I think.
I love that, man. I thought that was a huge pop when that happened, because all the way through, I remember when we were doing our on Monday, Scott, we were doing like our first impressions or something before we'd finished it. We were talking about the fact that Ethan just takes so much punishment across Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8.
Hates his hands.
Yeah, it's literally a meme at this point that he just loses his hands, loses his legs, glues them back together with a first aid kit. And when they draw so much attention to it in 8 especially, I was like, they're definitely doing something with this. They're not just
I just thought it was like a comment on how stupid
anymore.
7 was.
It happened too many times for me to not kind of view it, and you get a lot of references throughout about how Ethan has like a special body. I'm sure Heisenberg at one point says like, your body's interesting in the same way as mine, and I was like, they're definitely building towards something. So when they revealed not only that he's a molded, which I think a lot of people might have predicted that he was infected, but specifically that he dies in Resi 7 after first meeting Jack, that was the twist that I loved, because there is a gap of time. I recently played 7 like literally the night before going into 8. I finished it off, and there is that gap of time where Ethan gets punched out by Jack. He gets like dragged along to the dinner, and then suddenly you wake up and you've got an arm on, and it makes so much sense that he was infected in between that time, because like what else was he doing? Was he just waiting for him to come around? And that just made logical sense in a way that Resident Evil rarely does to me anyway. And I was like, that works, and it recontextualizes the rest of 7. It makes you appreciate the punishment Ethan takes in 8 more, and it makes sense that Ethan Winters, a man who is dumb as a bag of rocks and barely even knows when his own leg is off, like wouldn't even question that he didn't have a heart or that he didn't have human characteristics, because of course he wouldn't. He
I forgot he
has one goal.
He comes back without, because I didn't realize that Resident Evil 8 is secretly like Stubbs the zombie too. Like it is sort of getting through it, Lego parts bit by bit, snap it all on and everything. But yeah, he does the whole closing part of that game like without a heart. But yeah, Benroy, what do you think of the sort of revelation of that? Because they brought the mold in RE7. It wasn't necessarily very well received in 7, but I feel like they fleshed it out a lot more here.
I think the mold wasn't received because the molded were crap to fight, and they're boring after the first basement sort of thing. But like, I liked it. It's different because we don't really get many people dying. Like I said in like predictions video, like if Chris dies or anyone like that, then it's just something bold that they've not done yet. But due to like leaks at the very end, it could be that his consciousness is somewhere, maybe with Rose.
I think the assumption is that Rose can still contact everyone in the Megamai seat, so it would be like Ethan and whoever else.
I liked that he died. I liked that when that first time when he gets his hand lopped off by Dimitrescu, what? And then you've got to run around and then come back and grab your hand. And you go to block at one point. You've got nothing
he comes
there.
Out the hooks as well. He like tears his hand out.
Yeah, just like rips one off. He's like doesn't even think about to try and go like that. Rips one off and then just goes and then there's magic healing juice like right there. And you're just like, what are you doing, man? But then like, that was like, oh, I can't look at that. But yeah, I mean, it's gore porn to an extent, but it was contextualized and I didn't mind it.
I think for me, like I like the fact that I've referred to RE7 as being like, because for me, RE7 is more grounded. I know it goes ridiculous over the course of that game's runtime, but you do have the whole Texas Chainsaw style tone at the beginning of, dudes approaching this house. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and what's going on inside that house. And obviously by the end of it, you're fighting giant black goop monster that is the transformed version of Jack Baker. But for the most part, I thought that they did bring in a different tone enough to RE5, RE6, where it was just completely over the top and giant monsters with eyes all over them and everything else. For the most part, I thought that's what they were going for. But RE8 was like, no, we are embracing the wilder sense of Resident Evil, which I can totally go with in terms of big boss fights and stuff. But also because they, for me, like lose some of that the consequences that come with a more grounded, believable, consistent fiction.
I think it's like science fantasy, I'd probably say it now, because they lean on science fiction still as a crux, but some of it is just like, this is basically just magic, but with
I was going to say it's like magical realism. It's almost like Kojima storytelling. It's sort of just like, because you get told like Heisenberg just has electric organs, so that when Miranda experimented on him, he became Magneto, like, and you just have to, you get it in like 4 lines of text, and it's like, okay, sure, you have to just kind of go with that.
And his Magneto stuff is barely used. He's not used to fight you. He just pulls his hammer about, and then one point he comes down some stairs that he's crafted. But for the most part, he could have been anything because he just becomes a big metal lump in the end.
I was going to say you fight him. What did you guys think of that fight? Because I loved that fight. It was almost make no sense. Like you're fighting this, just a mech fight. It's like a Metal Gear, right? Metal Gear fight.
I was probably laughing, man. Honest. You jump into that thing like Chris has got this tank for you.
Chainsaw just like as well. Robot Wars.
So
he actually was Robot Wars.
And if you read the thing, it's like it's a special form of metal that Heisenberg can't rip apart either. So it's a specific that Heisenberg like half made to not be able to control. It's like what?
But like, I mean, the bit when you get thrown up into midair because Heisenberg is like, I've had enough of this. I'm going to make a big old tornado, throw you up in midair. And then you, as Ethan, get back in your tank in midair and then Dragon Ball style out of midair, like take him, go vertically down back onto him again. I thought the sequence itself was incredibly fun to play. I love the actually, we haven't even talked about the combat, but I think the combat feels really chunky and satisfying. But yeah, there are some things in here that are Chris punching a boulder-esque in terms of we're just going to do this and you're going to have to live with it.
What did you think of the shotguns?
Having collected all 3 of them, I thought they were pretty good. I think that was one thing. If we're going to delve into this, I hoarded everything throughout that whole game, bought the inventory upgrades and everything, because I didn't realize you could sell those weapons at all. It wasn't until the final fight where I messaged you guys and I was like, I'm fighting Mother Miranda with a knife and nothing else because I'm out of ammo. because I hadn't realized that there was a whole bunch of pickups to the left of where the Duke is at the end. So yeah, I mean, you guys obviously manage your inventories way better than me, but like to bring that into a comment on Resident Evil 4, that was a whole thing of people realizing they couldn't pick stuff up. They were having to Tetris their way around the inventory. How did you find that stuff in terms of like resource management, the map opening up, and the inventory stuff?
I wish I had to Tetris things around a bit more because I love that in Resi 4. Like, I genuinely, unashamedly love messing around with that briefcase.
You want to keep hold of your shotguns, mate?
Until everything is packed in. But here, I thought like it was a nice balance. For me, Resident Evil 7 didn't take the inventory management stuff far enough. So I liked here that there was a bit more consideration, and I liked that you still had to, you got like new weapons which could replace the old ones, and that's kind of like a straight upgrade system. I liked the upgrade system, but I thought it was one thing that was a little bit too familiar. I felt like I'd done that before in Resident Evil 4 or other Resident Evils, where I was swapping out these same shotguns for swapping out these same pistols, getting a machine gun in the final third or something. And it was good and satisfying. It's well executed in the game, but as you know, as a Resident Evil fan looking for something new, I felt that's where things got a little bit too familiar, and it's not the worst thing in the world, but I would have liked a bit more imagination when it came to the weaponry, because for as satisfying and as chunky as some of those shotguns were to use, which they definitely were, I was, especially coming straight from 7, I was thinking, I've just done this, I'm doing it on a bigger scale and it's far more refined, but I've done this stuff with these guns before.
That's an interesting thing. Like, Benroy, do you think at this point, just it's almost tradition at this point? They're almost Nintendoing it. It's like it would be like doing a Zelda without the Master Sword or something. Like, do you just need this set of weapons?
I'm just used to it, man, and I don't know if I'd want a Resident Evil without a pistol or a shotgun. Like, I'm just gonna blank say that I would have no idea what to do with it other than that. Like, I just wouldn't. I guess is it bad to just be happy with it? But at the same time, I can see why someone like Josh would want something else. But at the same time, I was like, this is just Resident Evil 4 in first person. I've not played not played a game that I feel like is so expansive, but yet catering to my specific needs from this franchise for a while. Like with Resident Evil 5, it was just a crappy 9-slot inventory system where healing items and weapons were one thing each, and the whole upgrading was soulless. So I just like the stretch of it here, and I like that how we expanded back out from, like, say 5, and just don't talk about 6 in terms of like that the menus there, and then 7. Like I liked the going back, and I guess that you jump off it from here and keep it sort of similar. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there, like the fact that this is essentially Resident Evil 4 in first person for a lot of it, and that's not to be reductive about it, but it feels that way when you're playing it. It feels as good as Resident Evil 4 shooting did, but in a completely different perspective. And that's why I can't hate the stuff that I'm talking about or really mark it down too much, because it still felt fresh, because you're coming at it from literally an entirely different angle, and it still works. It's just that, I don't want them to completely throw the pistols and the shotguns out, because like I said, they're still fun to use, and I didn't want to swap away from that. What is it? The second pistol you get, is it the M1911? Yeah, something. I'm not good with
M1911.
It looks the best, at least. Like I'm a critic for that as well. Like sometimes the last shotguns, I think the last one in Resident Evil 4 looks like crap, but because it's not it's this little chunky thing. But yeah, I know what you mean, like not wanting to. But
that was the reason I was hanging on to everything, because I was like looking at the stats. Like my fully powered old pistol had more attack power than the starting new one, so I was hanging on to everything. That's why I ended up with 3 shotguns, 2 pistols by the end of it.
At the end shotgun, you can get a clip of 40 without a pump, so you just like dun 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 dun. So it's just like it becomes crazy. But yeah, like sometimes I think this is with environments as well. This is what Resident Evil suffers from. Like the beginning always looks and feels so strong with has an identity, and then like the factory actually wasn't as bad as I thought it could turn out to be, because when I saw hints of it in the trailers, like Resident Evil 4, that last island is just
right
not good. And like some of the last ones, like the best pistol in Resident Evil 4 is the Red 9. It's like the second or third pistol, right? And if you upgrade from there, they're never as good. And I feel like some of the weapons had that here as well, just like keeping that pistol, which that pistol also has a little Easter egg on it, which is quite fun. There's a little gold B on it, which is looks exactly like the gold B key in Resident Evil 1 remake, where you used to open a room, you just dive into a puddle of that stuff. Cool. But yeah, I feel like this, for anything, at least the final areas were stronger. And I don't know if you want to jump straight into what do you think of the major using each basically Lord and boss to make, basically we're going to have a new part of the game here and there sort of thing.
I'm personally massive fan of that. I mean, I never mind a game being a video game. It's why I love Doom Eternal so much. So I'm just like, with Resident Evil, it was just like, let's just split the map. Like, I mean, like that whole thing with splitting Rose into 4 parts, I feel is almost more because of the video game side of it than anything narrative based. It was just sort of like, we need you to go to these 4 areas and retrieve these 4 items. Very Zelda-ish, very Nintendo.
The Duke is almost reading out like something the Colonel would from Metal Gear, like press this button to find your 4 parts to your daughter.
Yeah.
I've made the map bigger.
I've marked your map to go see this thing on this paper map that I've got. Yeah, I mean, I think like that stuff totally worked. I like them using it as an excuse to just explore 4 completely different biomes, and obviously you've got the different bosses. I did think that some of the follower enemy stuff, I want them to do more with that mechanic. I'm kind of sick of it just being, hey, this thing follows you, it's invulnerable. You can maybe put it down if you dump enough ammo into it. But I want more mechanics there. I kind of want more mechanics to the combat overall. Like pressing L1 to guard. L1 also being the push away enemy button, but only if they've hit you first. I hate, because that means I have to soak up some damage before I can throw them away. And I thought that sucked. Like I want them to flesh the combat out more. Maybe give me a dodge button or something. But I don't know if that's going to end up changing the feel of it too much. But yeah, what did you guys think of the base feel of combat? Like the actual firing of guns is really satisfying and stuff. But alongside the enemy variety, did you want a bit more to the actual core set of abilities?
Going back to play the Mercenaries last night for the first time, I realized like it is solid. You know, it doesn't quite have the
it's totally solid, yeah.
ability to go from, you know, leg shots into an uppercut like Resi 4 had. You don't have that same flow, but obviously this is a completely different style of survival horror shooting, but I still think it works, and I felt like I had a lot of options. I wouldn't have minded maybe like a little dodge out the way button, but like the ability to just kind of like have to run back, look at these 3 enemies coming for you, and then, you know, figure out the best way to take them down or at least drop them to the floor before they rush you. That's always been like a part of Resident Evil. And I thought the Lycans in particular added like an added element of diversity to the movements. You know, the fact that they could not just walk towards you like the regular shamblers, but they could jump on like the roofs of nearby huts, so they could come at you from above. They could hit you with range attacks and stuff. It kept it fresh all the way through, and I thought the enemy diversity in general was quite good. Obviously that's aided by the fact that it's so well paced. You know, like you go to these different lords and these different biomes, and like you said, there's this new flavor of horror. And even when we got to like the factory towards the end, and you get those Tetsuo the Iron Man inspired kind of mixture of flesh and machinery, like they weren't as frustrating as I thought, and they still managed to be scary. You know, they have the classic thing of the big glowing weak spot on their chest or back, but it felt tense. It felt fun to fight against them, and I felt like I was being rewarded for smart play. If I was running back, shooting them in the legs, switching to the powerful shotgun, hitting them in the chest, you know, doing something like that.
The one thing that
it did click for me in a way that I wasn't expecting it to.
Just like when you fight that dude with the propeller for a chest, any enemy that rushes you in a Resident Evil game, it's always like awkwardly like rotate, run out the way, rotate all the way back around again, get the shot off. And I kind of just think they need something that answers that. Some timing window based thing. I don't know, just something that would answer that. Because I feel like
no more quick times though. Like we don't want to go back to that time.
Not quick time. Some sort of like watch the animation, you know exactly when to get out the way. Just I don't know, something that you could stumble onto maybe if you already had a reliable dodge button or a block button or something.
I will jump on to what Josh said about the Lycans and say he's wrong. No, I'm joking. Josh is totally right. And I feel like the Lycans fit so perfectly because they're not slow and dumb like the zombies. They're smarter than the Ganados from 4. They make the game more vertical by being sort of on the roofs. And if you do get too close to those, they do then just instantly pounce you, which I found. I just thought I tested out the other night. And you can't stun them as much either, which I kind of like. And on Village of Shadows, whereas they're cautiously coming up to you in like other difficulties, they're just running at you and you've got no room to breathe, and one bite takes you down to no health, and it's so sort of like, oh, but fighting them added so much, like it's just a smart enemy that doesn't sort of say shoot you as much as like say if they had guns like in like a Resident Evil 5 or a 6, it'd get frustrating because the way Ethan moves, and I feel like Ethan moves so much better than 7. He felt like he was walking through mucky mud even in the mansion sometimes. But then like when you get all the Duke upgrades, you can just fly around, and it's like going through points and trying to beating the game in under 3 hours, and like running at an enemy, seeing he's taking a wind up, crouch, walk underneath him and keep going sort of thing. Like that sort of thing that you can really get into if you
That's good.
Like, I mean, it's if you like want to like hone it that way, but at the same time, you can just pretty much shoot you from way through most enemies.
I think I need to play it on a higher difficulty because for me, I didn't get any of this. Like, it was fighting the werewolves was just they were in front of me, they dodged left and right. I lined up the shot.
Hardcore is a sweet spot, I'd say.
Yeah, I think I just need to try something more that would play into more, or like let them bust out those animations more. Because occasionally I would see one on a roof, then they would jump down. Maybe I would shoot them off the roof. I didn't get any of that in terms of them being like a fleshed out enemy.
I did hate the goblin lads though. They were just like, okay. I mean, they were just
Knife chaps.
Just yeah, I mean, it was fun that they had like hoods sometimes and they looked different between areas, but they take more to kill than I like, and like they take 2 grenades from the grenade launcher, like to do takedown, and they're just annoyingly in the way sometimes. And on Village of Shadows, they place them in between boss fights. So like when you get your hand cut off by Demetrius, there's like one of them there. So you've got to try and get around that as well as, and they walk into the fights of the daughters as well. So they add a layer of like, oh, just go away sort of thing. But at the same time, it's funny to see them just get slapped out of the way by.
Speaking of, just go away. We should talk about the Beneviento set piece already doing the rounds as out PTing at PT segment, which is the whole bit where I forget the name of the character that you go up against who like plays a mind trick on Ethan, makes him sort of visualize his worst fears or whatever it is, and it sort of results in this big, long, effectively drawn out pitch black exploration of this doll maker room, that eventually results in a big mutant, looks like it's from Catherine style baby, big goo baby,
fetus, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Big old fetus with a big long stretchy mouth, crying and laughing at you, coming at you throughout the whole sequence. That for me is the high point of the whole game. I think that's one of the best paced things, one of the best payoffs, and one of the most effective. Just being uneasy, just being like, oh, this is like just, it's not a jump scare necessarily, but I think that it completely lands. It's one of the only times in the whole game where it's a dedicated horror, and for me it was great just seeing them be able to do that. And it's just like, oh, if Konami's not going to do it with Silent Hill, then we'll do our version of it.
It was a funny one because I think it works so well as a puzzle segment. You know, again, comparing it to Resident Evil 7, you get some of those in the Lucas segments when you're watching the tapes and you're doing a happy birthday segment, for instance, where you've got no weapons, you have to figure out your way out of the room. I just thought it was so well paced. You know, like the build up from analyzing the corpse, like looking for specific things to unlock specific doors. It felt classically Resident Evil in a way, but in a way that like looked great, was so well paced, and then you have that excellent payoff at the end. Though I do have a bone to pick Scott Tailford and other people on Twitter, and that's because all weekend I was seeing about this baby. Everyone kept saying there's one baby bit that's going to blow your mind.
Yeah.
And I must have seen that about 10 times. So every single time I was playing the game, I was like, is this it? Is this the baby bit? So when the baby bit finally happened, I was like, it's the baby bit. It's the baby bit. This is the one. Rather than being, oh my God, there's a scary baby. So in a weird way,
I saw was there was a baby section or something. So I was like, well, you could think it's anything. And then I always thought that when that hand comes around the end of the corridor, that in itself is still like, oh God, what the hell?
It's funny. Obviously,
Noises.
It's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
Not seriously annoyed, but at the same time, I seeing it so much, I was just every scare, even if it wasn't the baby, I was thinking, this must be the baby bit. Is this the baby bit? So when the baby bit happened, I was like, of course this is the baby bit, but still very effective, very good. And hiding under the bed when the baby's kind of like coming, you know, the bit where you hide under the bed and like the baby's coming around, like even though you probably know you're safe, you've played video games before, still pant-wettingly terrifying.
I think it's really well done. I've just thought actually the bit where the whole visual of finding that other version of Mia, or I keep calling her Mia, it's Maya, on lying down on the table, and she's like a doll, and Ethan's like, oh my God, someone's made a replica of the doll, and obviously you realize later on that it's all inside his mind. I wonder if that is literally how Ethan thinks of her, because he knows that she's infected, or he knows she's been through all this stuff. If that's like a neat sort of little visual nod. Ben, what do you think of the PT house?
That was one of those things where it was the end of a playthrough, so I was like at 2 a.m. doing that, and I was like headphones in, just sitting there, like the sound design in that, I was like, I wasn't ready for something as like
it's what I like watched it come at me, and I was like, okay, let's see what it does. And it wasn't until it like laughed and it's like the sides of its mouth like vibrated, and it was like, I was like, oh God.
And then I ran, and I still run after I played the game a few more times, but just the sound design of it, and I was like, this is really cool that you're getting chased by this. And I guess this is like the smallest of knocks, but I wish it on different playthroughs it would, because you can just do the same thing every time and get through it. I wish it was a bit different, but that baby, man. Just when you get into the lift at the end and you're like, is it going to close? Is it going to close? And then it just closes and it screams at you. I'm like,
there are 3 terrifying things in Resident Evil 8. That baby, that one hog in the little barn, and the mod of the baby's head on Chris Redfield from
great.
the opening thing. Those are the scariest things in any Resident Evil ever, I think.
Stop it, Ethan.
Having the little baby head on full-grown Chris stealing Rose is a high point. We should talk about, because it was front and center in the marketing. It was the whole first thing over Lady Dimitrescu, and obviously in the reality of the game, she is barely in it. I mean, she's out of the way in the first sort of hour and a half. She's the first person you take down.
I said to you, there's going to be one bit that the internet won't like, and it was basically that Dimitrescu was already gone. Right. I would have liked her to maybe done a Jack Baker, where you get one more bit of her, like, when Jack comes back later on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, at the same time, you just got to not get caught up in the hype, I guess, because they'd already made this game so long ago. But then I don't know, did they realize how powerful this character was? But I guess they did with the marketing.
Definitely lent into it. I mean, all the trailers after they released her measurements. They were like, here's this other
and she's everywhere, I guess.
And she's everywhere. But I think that was the thing going in that I said maybe on an older podcast was, I wonder what else the game has to it, where I don't want her to be the main villain. And it's almost like Heisenberg's the main villain, but obviously it becomes Mother Miranda, or she's always in the background, but Heisenberg's the one taunting you a couple times across the story.
Heisenberg was a nice pickup after Frog. I don't remember his name, Moreau or something like that. Yeah. Frog was just a bit boring, like a bit like one time it's like sort of like fun, I guess. Right. And I can't. What's the doll lady called again? I can't remember.
That's the one I can't.
I should know this, but I don't also think. But yeah, I feel like Heisenberg and Dimitrescu are the standouts for me, and I feel like they're nice 2 caps, and I'm glad they were far away. But then again, I would have liked a bit more, maybe their interaction or something else. Who knows? Like, what do you think, Josh?
I would have liked a bit more interaction between the lords, just because we get that great, in my opinion, that great scene towards the beginning where you first enter the castle and you get captured, and you get like Mother Miranda and all of the lords kind of like there taunting you. You have to run away from the Lycans. I thought that was cool, and you get a lot of text documents about the way they've all been constructed to be this weird family and stuff, and I thought that was interesting. But I would have maybe liked a bit more interaction between them. I can see why they keep them distinct, because obviously they are discrete brands of horror inspirations. But at the same time, I thought when it came to Dimitrescu, like, she was in it just enough for me. I agree that I wouldn't have minded a Jack Baker-esque reprise towards the end, maybe when you return to the castle or something. But I was also pleased that she wasn't just the end game or anything like that, and there was more to come. And I do think that her and Heisenberg kind of bookend the entire experience a little bit better. I am interested in the structure, though, if I can just talk about this for a second, because even though I love each section individually, I found myself surprisingly loving the factory thing, even though I had the same worries as Benroy going into it of, oh my God, they can't be doing just this boring factory. They didn't. They made it interesting. They made it like
view where you see all the soldiers being made. Like, that's kind of
like that lovely, beautifully haunting view and stuff. They made it interesting, but as a cap to the proper village experience, I think I would have actually preferred the jump into the Lycan den, because I felt like that fits more with the intro, and kind of the Lycans themselves were such a huge focal points. To have the factory right at the end before you get like the proper final stint into like the bosses and into Chris and stuff, I don't know. I don't know if I love its placement. I love it, but I don't know if there's perhaps a missed opportunity swapping those around and making the dive into the den kind of a bit more fleshed out and a bit more of a climax.
I think, and plus in terms of like fighting like multiple, imagine if you were running away from Lady Dimitrescu and out of the door in front of you comes Heisenberg, and you have to maybe you use their powers against each other to get away or something like that, or you hear them arguing because you got away, maybe you're outside the room or something like that. They could have done something in regards to that stuff. That opening bit where you're getting away, like, that's one of the only times you do see them all together. I think it is the only time where they're all together. You're in that one cave scene. You're getting away. I died to that rotary blade thing 10 times, because I was just like, oh, there's one safe spot meshed into the wall where I'm supposed to stand. That annoyed the living hell out of me.
What I've heard other people say on like other shows as well is that they were trying to break that one box.
Yes.
Like, I was trying to break it as well, but then like I died twice, and then I saw the little groove. But
I literally watched a YouTube video on what do I do, because I was like, I've died 10 because the checkpoint is at the beginning, so it's like you've got all the Heisenberg taunting you. I got to run all the way back there just to die again. I was like, F this.
I didn't think about that after it happened, to be honest. I forgot what you even meant. I must have got very lucky and done that first time and then just completely forgot it was even a thing.
JB strikes again.
Oh, yeah, just looked into that hole, I suppose.
There was a few times in looking through the Mia doll and stuff, and I was like, I'm missing one thing. What am I missing? It was like washing the ring and stuff. And I was like, I've not reviewed a game like this big, or like having to make sure I'm ready, and just like obviously having nowhere in the world like to even lean on. I was like, oh my god, what am I doing? I'm just normally it'd be fine, but just stressing out because certain little you miss one little thing, and then you're sort of like hampered for a bit, and you don't know. And that's what kind of like that. But then again, the puzzles.
Most unrelatable.
The puzzles aren't too challenging, like that wine puzzle where you got to make all the statues twist around and stuff like that.
The most unrelatable subject matter for a podcast ever, but there is something in like the specific weird window of like trying to review something and not knowing if you get stuck, not like having no idea if it's just you, if it's a bug, if like trying to get in touch with different people and be like, I found this thing. Or fighting a boss at 3 a.m. to hit like a deadline or whatever. And
there are no bugs in this game. Like, this game is one of the best running new games I've played in a while. Like, I don't know about you two, but just a smooth experience. Never crashed. I think I'm so used to like a Cyberpunk or something like that, where just like I'm used to being tortured by a game and just no.
No, I mean, even I was looking at the performance comparison just to see what the base versions were like, and even on PS4, it was still pretty. It had a variable frame rate, but it was above 50 as long as you play it at 1080p. And things like that, where I was like, the RE engine is just an insane piece of kit. Like, it just reminds me of when Konami started rolling out the Fox engine, and obviously that was just so impressive, even on the previous generation on 360 and PS3. But yeah, I guess closing thoughts, Mr. Benroy, you did the review, but have you got any expanded thoughts since you've been rerunning it and getting the road towards the platinum?
It's just quite a fun / easy platinum, I guess. Like, I probably have it. I don't know what the SS ranks are going to be like in Mercenaries. I'm about to finish my Village of Shadows playthrough, so we'll see. I wish there was more expanded lore stuff. Like, we touched on the BSAA for a moment, and then
the connections.
We batter Mother Miranda, and then we go on to just like we jump 18 years in the future. So I'm not scared for the future of Resident Evil. I think it's in the best place it's been in a long time. But I hope we get to touch back on those, and we don't just jump 18 years into the future forever. And I hope we see what Chris and all that were doing with the BSAA and why they've gone evil. And
that's one thing. I think we'll do a separate pod on predicting or whatever comes next, because I think either they'll do DLC packs like they did for 7, and we'll do the BSAA thing as Chris, or maybe Rose is the next focal
point. 2 of those
those
packs were essential as well, like in Resident Evil 7, like Not Hero and End of Zoe or End of Zoe. They were essential to play, sort of thing.
Yeah, which makes me think that maybe that'll be their business model, because it's not like they're going to roll out RE9. I mean, you've got the RE4 remake, and there's a bunch of other stuff coming up before they do the next main one. Josh, closing thoughts on the old Village?
Yeah, really good. The only like major gripes I have with it are because I'm like so into the Resident Evil games that I've seen what they're repeating, what they're kind of like diverging from, and it was only ever a sense of familiarity that I thought like maybe dragged it down a little bit. But overall, I thought from beginning to end, it maintains a level of quality that I didn't expect. Like I said at the start, like sometimes I expect Resident Evil games to kind of fall off in the final third or whatever, but this one thankfully didn't. And like, just to echo what you've said there, it's left it in like a really interesting place where I don't know what they're going to do next. Like, I don't know, like you guys said, if they're going to follow up the BSAA tease that they're using bioweapons in the field at the end of Village, or whether we're going to jump into the future. There are so many different avenues that they could explore, and I'm interested to see what Resident Evil 9 is now that they could have theoretically completed this era of Resident Evil. You know, Ethan's story is done. Does that mean we're not going to get another first-person game? Does that mean we're going to see another reinvention after this? Like, I think they could make it. They could, like, now is the time. I think if they wanted to do that, I don't know whether I personally want them to do that, but I feel like it's in this position where they could pretty much do anything from here because they've set so much stuff up, and I'm excited to see what that is, and it feels unpredictable.
I never thought of them actually doing that. If they go back to third person, that would be kind of crazy.
I think the next main 9 will be first, maybe, but like, what word can you fit the Roman numeral 9 in? Matrix, Resident Evil Matrix, because Rose is going to be some super powered scary woman now, so maybe her and Jake just do Matrix moves and run around, and that's the Resident Evil 9
That's what they've always been trying to
experience.
get back to, is the Resident Evil movie energy, to go back to that stuff. I think for me I thought it opened weirdly just too rushed, and I thought the explanations were terrible, and most of the writing I really didn't like, just to be totally bluntly honest. I thought it was terrible, but like in terms of playing it, I love playing it, and there was a whole chunk in the middle that I just thought was so strong, where I was like, this is game of the year material, in terms of the way the map's populated, the way they're encouraging you to go like hoover everything up, get all the rewards, and the feel of combat's brilliant. I just wish they did a little bit more with the dodge mechanic. With the block and the push away mechanic. Overall, super positive. I just wish that, considering they led the marketing with "What's Chris up to," I wish that was more satisfying. But at the same time, nothing really, just sort of doing his own thing, and you shouldn't have got involved, Ethan. But yeah, that stuff was really solid. It makes me want to go back and do 7 and 8 combined and see how it all sort of sits as the newest era. But for now, this has been the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. I've been your host, Scott Tilford, joined by Ben Roy Turner.
I'm going to go and punish that boulder punching arsehole right now.
And Josh Brown.
I'm going to go. Bye. I'm not going to punch you, Chris, because that's asking for trouble, Ben Roy. Like, that man is the size of a boulder, so good luck with that.
He's a giant baby as well.
What are you selling? Thank you.
Thank you for your patronage.